Nurse Confidant. I'm driving, and I just came back from the dentist, so my mouth is weird. It's still asleep. I can't feel like this whole side of my face. But I've been having some uncomfortable thought loops again, and I just realized something that could be beneficial to me, and I wanted to share it with you because if you're somebody that thinks as deeply as I do, and you really don't want to have temper tantrum type outbreaks when it comes to disagreements with someone, and so you try to control that and really respond instead of react, and the other person doesn't do that, and you feel like it's time for you to step away from that relationship, a way that you can close that thought loop is finish the conversation. Finish that hard part that you were trying to, all of those things that you were feeling that you were trying to express in a way that they weren't able to hear. Finish that conversation, and not just from your side of it, right? Most people say, hey, if you have a problem with something and it was a hard interaction, or you have something that you want to say, write it down and then burn it, right? I'm taking it a step further. Have that conversation out loud, because when you have that conversation out loud, your mind doesn't know the difference. It just knows that there's closure now. And so don't just say your part of what you wanted to say, but have them respond in the way that would have ended that discomfort and chaos within your body. And so, give yourself that loving closure that you need and that you wanted, that loving hug that you needed at the time when your feelings were out of control or overwhelming, because guaranteed you were probably mad at the time, but then that turned from anger to shame or regret or righteousness, right? If you didn't feel that you were wrong. And there's two sides to every story, and so not everybody's totally wrong, right? So you played your part in that conversation just like they did. You weren't able to communicate in a way that was effective to them, just like they weren't able to communicate in a way that was effective to you in order to resolve that conflict. And so it's extremely important to give yourself that closure when you're the type of person that gets into these crazy thought loops, like I do. Because I'll replay conversations from months ago, years ago even, if I felt strongly enough in that moment in the emotion that I had. And so giving yourself that loving hug is extremely important, especially when you're talking about really close relationships, because those are the ones that really hurt, right? When you're super close to somebody, that's the ones that tend to stick with you long after the initial disagreement was had. And it's very important for, if that person can't give you closure in the way that you need because they are either not in the same energetic field as you anymore, they're not on the same frequency as you anymore, the same thought patterns, however it is that you want to phrase that, you need to have that closure so that way you can move on. And I find that this is going to be a really helpful tool, because all the times before when I've replayed all of these conversations in my mind, the other person was always still combative, right? The disagreement was still going on. That person was still counting up a tally of all the things, or telling you how you were wrong, or how you were dumb, or how you were inappropriate, or whatever, right? So close the thought loop by changing that conversation to end it on something positive. So for me, it was like the person said, hey, I don't necessarily agree with what you said. However, I can see how what I said could have been perceived in a negative manner, because anybody can perceive anything in a negative manner. It doesn't necessarily mean that they did or said anything wrong. And so I want to step back and give you your autonomy and let you process this in the way that feels comfortable for you. And then, me coming back to that, I really appreciate you taking the time to actually hear me and listen, and not needing to respond in a way that just exacerbated the situation, because I really am conflicted about this, and I really would like to have a resolution with you. And that's just one way you can play it, right? I did the conversation a lot different than what I just played here, but something similar could be beneficial to you. So reframe that thought loop in your head and end it on a positive note. End it on your terms. Not, I had the last word, but I'm glad that we could come to a resolution on this. I hope that helps you, my dearest confidant. Until next time.